Tradition and idealism in board games. It's a privilege for us at Mitra to be able to work with something we believe in, that makes us feel part of a macro world within our own private world, experiencing different cultures, traveling time and space without moving physically, and mainly being able to bring knowledge and entertainment to other people. In the search of personal and professional fulfillment, this is how we became toy manufacturers, especially wooden board games. People who approached our game exhibition and sales stand said that nowadays there is very little interest in this type of product. Children only care about electronic games and those on mobile phones, but a few among them became hypnotized and loved the playful objects we presented at the moment. It felt like an initiation process, where people related to their innermost wish to abandon the present and connect mentally and emotionally with something that already seemed to be part of their best side. Nowadays we know that board games come from ancient traditions, from distinct populations, allowing us to tell the story of the toy and how mankind played with it. A collection of cultural thoughts and habits from practically all our primary civilizations. Studies and influences. The spirits of time give us great guidelines for successive epochs. The different individualities of populations allow the spirit of the time to extend all over the earth. Rudolf Steiner. Playing is spontaneous and inherent to all children, and we'd like to preserve it in its essence. However, playing is surrounded by basic rules, so that the people playing together do not become disengaged. Playing in its turn is no exception to this basic concept, as it has always been present in the adult world. However, it took a while for it to become an activity accessible to children. It's almost as if children and young people had conquered the right to play recently, a topic that appeared no sooner than in the mid-20th century. Around 5,000 years BC, pharaohs and Egyptians played Senet with the idea and belief that they would have to face God Ra after death in a game challenge. Therefore, they were buried together with their boards in their mausoleums. Another example that shows that board games were part of the adult world is that every European king in the Middle Ages played backgammon, making the game of the kings and the king of the games, until the invention of cards and the rise of chess. Finally, the history of games is richly illustrated by myth and reality, interacting with the innate need human beings have of challenging themselves and promoting disputes and comparisons to stand out in a society full of diversities and power control. A proposal of playfulness. Today our proposal is to bring these games that have always been part of civilizations into a context which is current and accessible for all ages. We know that the culture of playing is part of practically all live beings, including animal species, but toys, games, as a playful object are exclusively part of human nature. Playfulness in the simple act of playing permeates the path of culture, education, health, social well-being, and leisure, elevating it as one of the most attractive ways of playing. Studies and influences. A toy production environment, either small scale or industrial, is almost a sacred task for us, a primary activity, something we have to transmit to the new generations without the playful aspects being swallowed by modern convenience and technology. Several authors which have stood out in studies of playfulness and playing guide us and bring inspiration to keep us aligned with our proposal of working with games and, why not, with what we consider our life mission to be. Board games also reveal a way of thinking about the evolution of our species. They are proof of our capacity to preserve memories, experience sensations, emotions, and feelings which make us human. Elements of human biography told through the history of games. As a question of survival, mankind has always formed competitive societies with disputes over power, domain, or preservation of species. The history of board games shows us they reflect the identity, desires, and challenges of each society or civilization in their time. When we learn about ancient games such as the Mancala Family One, a traditional African game, we are getting closer to a culture that permeated the first civilization in our history. The expansion of games through board game and rule variations show us how important agriculture was, as well as the act of sowing among the populations. In a mixture of disputes and cooperation, the rule of this game teaches the importance of distributing seeds today, not only in the fields but also in the field of our opponents, a unique condition for us to achieve a good harvest. The capacity of board games remaining over time, showing the interaction between the place, the people that live there, and their culture, is something that intrigues and shows us the sacred geography of mankind. It's very interesting to observe participants while they play a board game, because every move and every decision made always reflect this issue, and many of them shows very interesting relations with concepts of spirituality and evolution, either from the people, the times, or from an individual. Does our ancient heritage have a relationship with our future? Nowadays, we see many games that are adapted to be played virtually or online, and they maintain the same content characteristics or qualities which have attracted new players. However, when we introduce a physical board with appealing aesthetics and presentation, anyone, a child or an adult, will be attracted to learn about this young old universe. What common archetypes live in the mythology of different populations? We can follow the trajectory of a game passing through several cultures and adjusting to its times and place. The game Mancala, for example, has more than 200 names registered and different rules, always maintaining its essence as a game of sowing and harvest. These are the archetypes present in board games that keep the mythology of populations alive. If we follow African expansion, its colonization and influences, we can understand the success of this game, which is one of the virtual games found in modern mobile phones. Thus, the culture of playfulness paves the way to seeing the characteristics and image of each population as a manifestation of man's spirituality, his beliefs, principles, and individual's quest. The mission of each population in retrieving the spiritual sphere nowadays. We can say that until the middle of the current century, board games could be classified in only 6 basic categories. Trail games have the objective of going from one point to another, following certain rules. For example, in the royal game of Ur, from summer dating from around 25,000 BC, the person who manages to place all their pieces follow the trail and remove them from the board wins. On the other hand, Senet, known as the Game of the Pharaohs, brings Egyptian culture from 5,000 years ago, making a ritual within itself. In the same family, backgammon, a favorite among the ancient Roman noblemen, also called the King of the Games and the Game of Kings, became popular all over Europe during the Middle Ages, and today it is one of the most played games around the world, as they say you never stop learning about it. Capture games have the objective of capturing some of all of your opponent's pieces. In this group, we can highlight checkers from the 20th century, known as the Fields, but with information that refers to the origin of the game in ancient Egypt. The rules, the way we know them today, came up in the Middle Ages when the game became very popular and established a presence around the world. The game Fanerona from the island of Madagascar and derived from Alkirk has a peculiar capture and blocking method as a tactical ability by approaching and distancing the pieces, combining simple moves with complex strategic variations. Following the same line, we have Dayblood from Lapland, which reminds us of historical flights between semi-nomad warriors and Finnish colonizers, who in the first millennium AD arrived searching for fertile farming land. The objective is not only to capture your opponent's pieces, but also to immobilize them. Another game we can highlight is Carbaga, an African variation of a capture game where pieces must always be moved forward. However, when you get to the opposite side, they are crowned, mullah or sultan, and can then be moved in any direction, acquiring greater autonomy and status. The hunting and persecution games usually have distinct pieces and objectives for each player. In this group, we have Bagashau, a millenary game from Nepal that provides an incredible clashes of forces between tigers and goats that will challenge your personality. Another example in this category is Nefertafel, known in Scandinavian until 400 BC. It was taken by the Vikings to Greenland, Iceland, Ireland, England, Wales, and the European Far East. Two distinct objectives also characterize the game: the king's defenders versus the mercenaries. In territory conquering games, you apply war strategies to obtain control of a certain area. In this category, you have Go, a game played in the Chinese imperial court, the shoguns, samurais, and monks of a feudal Japan that is fascinating because of the simple rules and the complexity attained in the game. Close to China, originally from Tibet, Ming has the objective of capturing your opponent's pieces and dominating the greatest area possible. When captured, the pieces change honors and color to belong to the opponent. Another category is that of calculation and capture games, characterized by sharing of the pieces between players. Its main representatives are the games from the Mancalas family, where the board represents Mother Earth from the African environment together with the shared seeds piece showing human relationships and cosmological and mysteries of agriculture. The last category is of games in row of three, which have the name of the category as an objective: put three pieces in a row. Although it sounds simple, the trail or windmill of Phoenician provenance from around 1000 BC is proof of the opposite. The board was the symbol of power and represented the huge universe of conquest made by its people, representing the sea, the capital Tyre, and each of the colonies such as Cadiz and Carthage. In the same family, we find Soro Yamanato from Zimbabwe, which owes its name to an ancient construction complex called the Great Zimbabwe or Great House of Stone, where the former rulers of the Great Empire lived, known for their rich gold mines. It was played by children and suggested by the name of the game, with stones and boards drawn on the ground. Originally from the Philippines, Tapatan Sisima is still popular with richly adorned boards, as in the board diagrams drawn on the floor and windowsills of the doors in their homes. Based on the examples of the games above, it is possible to perceive how diversified the world of board games is, allowing for the development of several skills, and thus it is a great instrument to be applied in education, leisure activities, and playrooms. We believe all learning brings a change in inner behavior. Therefore, education is not immersed only in schools, but in all the experience we go through in our lives. We believe all learning brings a change in inner behavior. Therefore, education is not immersed only in schools, but in all the experiences we go through in our lives. In almost 20 years of activity with board games, we are able to collect several testimonials which make us sure of a thriving and very important path for our society. Mitra has participated in one of the greatest cultural events in Brazil, the International Biennial Book Trade Show in São Paulo, spreading the culture of board games and increasingly conquer more people. The world we live in today finds us inserted in a virtual world, where information comes very easily and the stimuli to think are limited. When we find a physical board game and a concrete opponent, our competitive instinct invites us to integrate the act of the feeling, stimulating our thinking. Board games, in today's variety and productive expansion, allow us to easily reach the skills and capabilities currently pointed out in new laws and guidelines that govern education in several countries. However, for us, at this moment, games as an educational element teach us much more than a logical reasoning, motor coordination, and respect for others. They mainly teach us to wait our turn to play and to feel a certain contentment. Games affect our senses, they generate an inner will. We can see and feel this feedback from our children or even with a group of young friends that get together one day just to play. Nowadays, we need more focus on education and in dealing with our children and youth with regard to spiritual qualities of human beings themselves. We believe that the principles of modern education must be totally centered on holistic education, where each person finds his or her own identity, meaning the purpose in life through connections with the community, nature, and spiritual values. At this point, it is our duty to find out how the game approach influences people. Education must try to understand and overcome the challenges of our own personality. The study of human temperaments highlights the need to pay attention to individuality, ours and of others, as a unit or a group. Try to imagine or observe children playing spontaneously, and soon you will be able to identify the four human temperaments: melancholic, choleric, sanguine, and phlegmatic, also known as the four humors. We can identify players that get very angry and moody when they are losing the game, the choleric ones, the students who understand the objectives and strategy of a game as quickly as they lose interest in it, the sanguine ones, the people, children and adults, that don't get excited with the revealing and excitement of the majority, preferring to observe, the melancholic ones, and finally the child that apparently has difficulty to remember the rules and information about the game, but who, at a certain moment, begins to win repeatedly with dedication and responsibility, the phlegmatic ones. These are the types of players that we will find around gaming tables, in classrooms, in playrooms, at home with our children, nephews and nieces, or grandchildren. How can we captivate all of them in a group and play, generating a good experience? This is the challenge that all educators and toy librarians have. Board games affect our behavioral standards without proposing a unique standard. After all, with self-education, each one behaves in a different manner when alone or when he/she is in a social environment. Furthermore, games are a strong instrument to improve interpersonal relationships. Think of two images: a solitary youth playing an electronic game and a couple or group of players interacting around a game board. If on the one hand, the level of concentration and attention of the solitary player is undeniable, on the other, the interaction and connection between the players is fascinating, as one can enter our opponent's mind to plan a game strategy. You need to capture your opponent's signals to be able to act, move, and be successful in the game. Facing reality, conditioned to the topic of a game, or even pursuing a strategy of moves to be successful has more to do with playfulness and creativity than intelligence and logical reasoning. Playing allows us to discover our preferences, abilities, and skills to choose a future profession, for example, that can reactivate and nurture our innermost desires and preserve the spiritual qualities of the children inside us. In our human condition, we don't know how to live on our own. Board games, in this aspect, also contribute towards an ample social and planetary context. Everybody agrees that we need to live in groups, educate our own relationships, so we can then understand what collective and conscience means. This may seem like a vague philosophy, but board games seem to be well connected to this idea, as several games are played in different countries, in a similar manner without any previous common knowledge. Board games allow us to be self-aware of who we are individually and collectively, raising questions from our past, present, and future. They help us to develop our spiritual intelligence and our purpose in life, abilities that are missing in children nowadays. The games and playfulness help us to learn, as well as in social coexistence, providing guidelines about respecting rules, strategy, and control, providing children, youth, and adults with the challenge of outperforming themselves and working in a team. As a learning instrument in an intrinsic manner, games help in the development of individuals in the creative, affective, historical, social, and cultural perspectives. By playing, one can invent, discover, develop skills, and experiment new points of view. Potentialities as well as individual affectivities are harmonized in the development of social and cognitive abilities. This is why the presence of board games is essential in clubs, playrooms, educational and social cultural institutions, and other spaces that are interested in offering a diverse public the opportunity of experiencing activities that are playful and of social interest. When playrooms also have board games, they will provide for an extended public not only of children, but people of any age that are interested in playing, bringing generations close together. Besides, they are excellent tools to address a specific group, for example, a school, a company, a community, a hospital, disabled young people or adults, underprivileged children, and so on. One of the greatest challenges our society faces in daily life regarding our education and public health policies is to transform coexistence and social and individual responsibilities in a conscious, full, moral, and ethical attitude. In summary, board games are a natural impulse that human beings have and they work as a great motivator. The player, through board games, obtains pleasure and makes a spontaneous and voluntary effort to reach objectives. Mobilize mental scheme stimulating thoughts, organize time and space, integrate several dimensions of the affective, social, motor, and cognitive personality, favoring the acquisition of cognitive behavior and the development of abilities such as coordination, skill, speed, strength, concentration, encourages respect from other people and cultures, stimulates self-learning with regard to better acceptance of the rules, accelerates verbal, numerical, visual, and abstract reasoning, and last but not necessarily least, allows for the solving of problems or difficulties, encouraging the search for alternatives. Thinking about the main difficulties and needs of current playrooms and social projects in which Mitra collaborates, we developed a playful chest, creating the idea of a mobile portable playroom, with about 50 games from around the world with the rules that are easy to transfer and learn, providing constant enhancement of game strategies. Each game does not last more than 30 minutes and offers an open door to several cultures and times of mankind for any age and any place. Mitra is not only interested in manufacturing a product to sell, it is also concerned with its responsibility and mission towards society, bringing topics of social interest and personal growth. We encourage the culture of peace and work towards humanization of the production, integrating our employees with concepts of preservation and personal fulfillment, with products that have an appreciative presentation favoring aesthetic, proportion, and beauty concepts. Mitra is still worried about the environment issue without forgetting good aesthetics in its products. This is why we take into consideration the use of materials until the process and production environment focusing on sustainability. All Mitra products use reforested wood, they reuse alternative materials as well as pieces of wood, seeds, and leftovers from manufactured materials, non-toxic paints and varnishes, and the use of recycled industrial paper. Furthermore, there is concern in the small, almost non-existent production of waste materials, no disposal, high durability, and easy maintenance packing, preventing the discard and shortening of the toy's life. Therefore, Mitra games allow us to experience elements from nature through touching, texture, aesthetic appreciation, and even the smell of food, seeds, and other organic materials. This is why Mitra has been classified by the media as one of the few companies in its segment that works in favor of green toys. We want to stimulate spontaneous playing, playing just for playing, without the permanent intention of teaching or learning something. We believe the human soul reveals itself clearly in the pleasure of spontaneous playing and speaks for itself, regarding what it brings and needs to experience, its fulfillment and human condition. Board games continue to reflect our societies every minute. They are accompanied by the history of human civilization, its development, and peculiarities. And at the end of the 19th century, with the great influence from the first industrial revolution, games went through a slow and gradual evaluation and diversification, incorporating bit by bit different topics like abstract mechanics, which was dominant at the time. Maybe because of the increasing influence from the North America in the world, mainly after the two world wars, games that originated or were sold in that country became very popular around the world. Among these games we can mention Monopoly and Risk. These games, which have an abstract origin but mix different topics and some variations in their mechanics, way of playing, dominated the world until the emergence of Settlers of Catan by Klaus Tauber in 1995. We can say that the launch of this game was a milestone in the history of board games around the world. Settlers of Catan, with its simple mechanics, is also extremely dynamic, and all the players participate in all the moves. It opened a range of new possibilities and diversities for the way we participate in a board game, accelerated growth, and has been captivating a legion of new people who appreciate this entertainment modality, and why not say that it was responsible for the boom in board games over the last few years. Considering these revealing possibilities, we are looking at a gradual and accelerated change in the increased complexity of board game classification and its mechanics, as there is blending of one or several of the 6 previous basic classifications at different levels. As mentioned before, board games continue to reflect our societies every minute. As in the case of games, are we coping with living in a world where we participate in everything all the time? Now it's time for you to decide what the next game is going to be and whose turn it is to play.